So this is Founders Month for New Life of Memphis, and we're excited about this time that we have to dive into some of the history. You know what? One of my greatest joys of being a part of the ministry is the time that I get to spend with Bishop and Pastor Linda. I get nuggets all of the time. And so, you know what? We want to sit down today, and I want to ask them some questions about their journey as church planters. Many of you know that this has been no ordinary excursion. This has been an extraordinary journey, but what I like about it is that God has been with them. Come on, and let's go with me as I sit down with Bishop and Pastor Linda, and I'm going to ask them questions in celebration of our 12th year church anniversary. Come on. When y'all got married, this was not something you saw. This whole pastor.
This wasn't something we planned.
This ain't nothing you planned.
And it's not something I saw. I didn't grow up with seeing females in ministry. So God calling me to preach and then calling me to pastor was a God thing, for sure. It was not something that I said, oh, I want to be that. I didn't know there was a that.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was God.
I was pastoring Riverside Baptist Church this particular month of this particular year, and I don't know the month or the year, but I would tend to think that it was somewhere spring, early summer. I went back to Los Angeles, California to preach at the Pilgrim's Hope Church, which is my stepfather's church. And it was
Pilgrim's Hope.
Pilgrim's Hope. It was a celebration of the clearing of the mortgage. And so we got to LA relatively early. Obviously service was on that Sunday. We got there, I believe, on Friday. And we decided, because we were in the hotel, to walk to a particular place to get some food. And I remember her saying to me, the Lord is calling me to pastor. And my first thought was, well, how is that possible? So you're going to
Another church pastor? Yeah.
No, that I don't. So here's what I did, because all through our relationship, God has said things to her, and I want to be honest about it. Not initially did I catch it or see it. Okay. The cool thing about that is she trusts God enough to speak to me about it, so that my heart could be one to what God was saying, so that we would not be enemies in something. And it was the same situation. I remember saying to her, if that is the case, God will make it happen.
Wow.
Because we didn't have the idea of birthing a church nowhere on our radar.
No.
So I didn't know where God was going to use me in this pastor, because I had maybe been preaching maybe a year or two.
Yeah.
And I heard the Lord in prayer said, I've called you to be a shepherd.
Wow.
I've called you to pastor. And I told two people. I told him and one other person here in Memphis. I won't call her name. But I told those two people, and I never said another word about it. So, but not knowing where it would happen, how it would happen, just knowing that I heard the voice of the Lord. So it wasn't about beating him over the head, because I had nothing to beat him over the head with, because I didn't know where in the world.
You didn't have a strategy.
I didn't have one.
So the chairman of our trustee ministry at Riverside, probably 6 to 8 months after she had said that, we were talking casually, and he said to me, he said, let me ask you something. And I said, okay, what? He said, what are you going to do? And I'm saying, what am I going to do about what? He said, what are you going to do about the fact that Linda is going to start pastoring? And I looked at him and said, huh? He said, what are you going to do about that? He said, because she's going to pastor.
Wow.
And I said, really? He said, oh yeah, she's going to pastor. That wasn't confirmation for me, because earlier God had confirmed, not this in terms of new life, but that she would have that opportunity. And I just simply said to him, I don't know how that's going to happen, but if it's going to happen, God will do it. I'm good. So it was never a critical issue with me, because God had done everything else. So, I mean, if he was going to do this. See, here's the thing about God you have to understand. The purpose of God doesn't leave people out. And you got to know that. So whatever God does with Linda, it ain't like he's going to forget about me.
That's good.
So that keeps you from jealousy and resentment and all that kind of foolishness, because especially if you're married, and God starts talking to one about what he's going to do, he has considered the both.
Wow. That's and I would imagine that took an incredible amount of patience. It took an incredible amount of faith.
Oh, yeah.
To just let God lead. And let me say, through so many things, I have seen you all let God lead you through, and I'm not naming anything, but I've seen you both convinced of a thing in your own person,
Certainly.
ready to move, but saying, God has not spoken on this thing. Sounds good. I mean, wherever 2 to 3 come together, they agree, he'll be in the midst. But I have seen you two even agree on some stuff, but also agree that the Lord has not said move on this thing yet. And that,
Because I'm not gonna move without His power. Right? And so, some things God will permit you to do, but you don't have His power backing you.
You don't have his permission.
Right? Because even He permit you, because there is a will of man.
yes, ma'am.
And so, in His permissive will, not His sovereign will, I just taught on this in Bible study, that there is a sovereign will of God where He says that I don't have to consult with anybody. I make decisions out of the counsel of my own will. So there's some things He just doesn't even consult us on. But there's a place where God, in His permissiveness, will allow you. But now you're going on your own, right? And so you got to know that I can't do it. I can't do it without Him.
So we've learned the voice of God, and we've learned to follow it even when initially we don't understand it or agree with it. And we've come to the conclusion that He didn't never, not at one time, does God call the both of us to Him in agreement.
And you know what, Bishop? I think the other part that people may not know about our relationship is, so when we got married in '86, he was preaching, but he wasn't pastoring. So I've walked with him as he was hearing God, and we were having to follow God based on what he was hearing. So we get married 2 or 3 years in, 3 or 4 years in, he gets called to a church. So now it's, all right, baby, the Lord is calling me to pastor, right? And so we follow that. Even leaving Dallas, Texas, him believing that the Lord had called him to Memphis was still one of those places where we prayed and we listened to the Lord. So the journey hasn't been all about me. It's been about what God has been doing in each of our lives individually. That I agreed wholeheartedly what he said, that he's never called one without taking the other one into consideration.